I'm the son of a billionaire, part of the 1% of the 1% of the 1%. Ask me anything. Very brief summary. I'm 29 years old. My father is worth just shy of $2 billion, and he's on a rapid trajectory be worth significantly more. I'll leave it at that and provide details as requested. I'll try to be as honest as possible, but obviously I'll be vague on identifiable details. I don't really have anyone to talk to about this because of the uniqueness of the situation, so it's cathartic to speak openly about a subject that's obviously a bit taboo. I'd like to talk about it because it helps me feel more connected, and hopefully it will offer perspective to anyone who has preconceived notions on the super rich. Not that I don't expect to validate some of the stereotypes. I'll try to answer promptly at the start, but will be basically squeezing the summer into my day, so I may disappear for a bit and then come back. Ask away if you're interested. In sociology class the other day, we had an interesting discussion on how everyone seems to want to identify as being middle class. Poor people often say lower middle class, and people who make 100, 600k a year call themselves high middle class. It almost appears that there's a stigma to being very wealthy. You even said it yourself in the description, that it is almost taboo to talk about being wealthy. I'm curious what your insight on this matter might be. For example, why do you think it's taboo to be rich? Have you experienced any resentment from people because of it? What's something about the super rich that you wish the other classes understood about you as a way to try to make them possibly resent you less? I don't like saying I'm rich because there's a huge risk of resentment. I feel like I should apologize for being the 1%. The sentiment is that the money shouldn't be ours, that it's a zero-sum game, and we are stealing from the poor by being so rich. I don't want people hating my dad because of how much money he has. He worked his ass off to earn it, and it was all to provide for his family, as is the goal of most families. That he happened to earn a lot more in pursuit of that isn't something I think he should feel guilty for. He didn't take from the poor, he just had a lot of success. It's jarring for people to vilify him because his career just happened to earn him an extreme amount of wealth. This is not to suggest that he's better than those who had less financial success. There's obviously luck and good timing contributing to where he is today. Resenting me I could understand more because I did jack squat to earn it. But by the same token, I didn't choose this, so I don't think I should be vilified for something I effectively have no control over. I think the resentment comes not from individuals, but from the group as a whole. People are living their lives as wage slaves in a system where the gap between rich and poor has been growing year after year. Technology and efficiency improves all the time, and yet families with both adults working full-time can barely afford the type of lifestyle families with the one earner working full-time could afford in the 50s and 60s. There's a leak somewhere. For some reason the middle and lower class just can't seem to benefit from all of our crazy advances and our growing economy. Hence the major resentment for the rich, that just get richer and richer, while everything just gets harder and harder for the rest of us. Daily news about billionaires buying the government and selling our futures with their corporate-backed wars and environmental destruction doesn't help either. As with all types of resentment, disliking the group doesn't mean all individuals are bad people. A lot of the resentment, at least from me anyway, is that the super rich waste money like frig, buying overpriced consumer shit they don't need when that money could have been spent in a much better way doing a lot of good. The way my parents spend their money does seem absurd at times, and I've mocked them openly for some of the things they've said that sound so outlandish. But it takes some perspective to understand why their lifestyle has evolved. At an effective income of maybe $150 million a year, very rough estimate, things that seem incredulous to you are a drop in the bucket for them. So the question becomes, why not to do those things other than public perception? The price and maintenance of a private jet is no more costly to them proportionally than a Honda Civic is to the majority. And they make annual charitable donations that exceed what most people will make in a lifetime toward causes they feel passionately about. $20 meters, and the amount they can provide has an enormous impact for the better. Do your nearest and dearest know your worth, potential or otherwise? Money never made the man, so describe yourself and your interests. Do you like toast? Do you despise cauliflower? Are you indifferent to Scrabble? And finally, how are you? Well, obviously my wife knows. We have one pair of friends who at least know my parents are very wealthy, since they've stayed with us at one of their properties. Everyone else, hopefully, assumes we have little more than the middle class lifestyle that we provide for ourselves. Toast, love it. Cauliflower, my wife's good at disguising it. Love Scrabble but am better at the fast-paced games. I'm about as stereotypical as a Redditor comes. White, male, introverted, gamer. I didn't have much ambition of my own, and will almost certainly never match the enormous success that my father has had. That leads to a lot of overwhelming guilt in my day-to-day life. I have to say, fantastic Emma. Your answers are breaking the stereotype you mentioned. I really like your lifestyle. Your parents didn't give you a free pass with their money and the pressure to make as much money as them. It seems it's only you, not them, telling you to have more ambition. You look down to earth. My question, do your parents pressure you to want more? Make more money? In my situation, my father worked his ass off to have as much money as he does. I am ambitious, not as much as him, yet, but I do get just a little tiny bit of pressure from him. Well, I do think that my anxiety comes from my dad wanting me to do better, in part. As I mentioned elsewhere, I dropped out of college. I did terribly in school, had high overall intelligence, and tested well but just failed to put in the necessary sustained effort. I've recently been diagnosed with ADHD and the difference since starting treatment has been profound, but I wouldn't dare tell my father that because A, he's convinced that it's a fake condition, and B, I doubt the diagnosis myself because it just feels like too convenient of an excuse. I've been taught that there's no excuse for not succeeding other than not working hard enough, and by that metric, I've largely been a failure. My dad's success and his hope for my success has been an enormous burden, but I think at this point he's generally given up on me having the same drive as him. What's that one thing you never got as a kid? A gaming console? Or as my dad affectionately referred to it, the Super Nintendo. Somehow computer games didn't fall into that purview though, so I had a top-end desktop and laptop anyway. Didn't stop me from being obsessed with gaming. The PS2 was the first purchase I made when I started getting my own paycheck. Do you have any regular friends now? What's a Friday night like for you? My wife and I are shut-ins, and we'll spend most evenings just watching shows and playing video games together. When we meet up with friends, we meet at the pub or go to one of each other's houses. A couple times we have taken some friends up to one of my parents' properties, but only after we've come to know them quite well. But generally, unless I'm with my parents at the time, I live a very standard middle-class lifestyle. Thoughts on economics and/or politics? Libertarian free market, radical socialism, social democracy, liberal welfare state? I generally lean conservative/libertarian on fiscal issues, which probably isn't surprising. Actually, it almost always surprises me when young people hold conservative views. As a young conservative who could quite likely have considerable influence someday, does it worry you when you think about the anger that is obviously being generated among the lower classes due to them receiving a smaller portion of generated wealth than they previously did? I don't think we are headed towards French Revolution and terror levels of rebellion, but I find recent proposed ties between the rise of populism and growing anger over economic imbalances interesting, and wonder what you think should happen with regards to it. The fact is that 90% of rich families lose that wealth within 3 generations, 70% after only the first generational transition. Income mobility exists across generations, and there's an obvious regression to the mean. I agree that we are definitely in a period of extreme concentration, but it's not going to last. Like every other economic area, there are booms and busts. I imagine that within the next 10 to 15 years we'll be reading about the fall of the super rich. But it's certainly possible that I'm being naive. Additionally, many of the wealthiest have already pledged to donate as much as 99% of their wealth when they pass. Buffett, Gates, Zuckerberg, etc. will not leave the majority of their wealth within their family. I agree that the animosity between classes is a big problem though, which is why I've been reluctant to tell friends about my financial standing. As for me having a political influence, God, I hope not. The last thing I want is to deal with politicians. I hold conservative values, but I don't think that I do so because it's convenient for me. but it's impossible to know how I would feel under different economical circumstances. I don't believe you. I'm going to need you to PayPal me $50 for verification purposes. Please and thank you. For real though, what's the problem that billionaires have that we plebeians do not? Child of a billionaire problems include rock bottom self-esteem and endless guilt. As for my parents, their problems are a lack of time and a loss of perspective. Worst has probably been their focus on maintaining a social appearance, which has come at a significant cost in regards to their relationship with me and my siblings. They spend so much time these days trying to make our family seem perfect that they forget to do the actual things that keep a relationship strong.